With allocation challenges continuing to mount around the world, choosing products for our designs has become harder than ever for engineers and their companies. With mounting issues continuing for the global supply chain, what are semiconductor manufacturers in the industry doing to help mitigate frustrations and help keep production lines moving? Whether we're trying to buy a car, design our next product, or just keep our existing product in production today, there's no doubt that supply chain issues in all industries, including the semiconductor industry, have had an enormous impact on us as embedded engineers. There are some signs of improvement on the horizon, but many of us have been left feeling a little bit helpless. We've been left feeling unsupported, and in many cases have gotten very emotional as we see the designs that we've worked so hard on be unable to actually go to production and help build revenue for our companies. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with Marty Branham, who's the vice president of STMicro's Geographic sales unit, and wants to talk a little bit today about what ST is doing to help work with engineers, work with distribution, and figure out how exactly we get through these difficult supply challenges. Marty, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely, Todd. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. As I speak with a lot of engineers, there's a lot of emotion, and that's not normally something that we as engineers have. But I'm certainly seeing in this environment, we are all getting very emotional as we try and keep things going to production. What's the message that you're giving to engineers who have designed in ST products and are trying to get their designs into production today? And what's ST doing to help those engineers?
Sure. These are definitely challenging times. A lot of uncertainty still out there, which often leads to the frustration you referred to. And this is going throughout the industry and the supply chain. So what we continue to see is an imbalance, basically, between demand and capacity. And it's driven by a handful of mega trends in the industry. You have things such as the 5G migration, the vehicle electrification, and the overall increased semiconductor content in vehicles, as well as the personal electronics and the IoT and connectivity that we all expect in our products these days. And finally, the industrial digitalization of the industrial space. So all these megatrends are leading to this imbalance of demand and supply, as I mentioned, and ST is just working through that the best we can, having conversations with our distributors and customers like yourselves to work through that.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge everywhere. It's not an ST alone by any means. I think we all know, like I mentioned earlier, if you're trying to buy a car, if you're trying to buy a cell phone in some case, if you're trying to buy a laptop, sometimes it's really a challenge with all the allocation that's going on out there. It's interesting. You talk about kind of the super cycles and what we have, and this allocation's been going on, it seems like, for nearly 2 years now, where things have been a challenge. I was in San Jose last week talking with a lot of different supplier executives, and I think as I asked this next question, I got answers all the way from it's over in October to it's over in October of 2032. What are you seeing right now, and how much longer do you think this allocation is going to last?
Well, I mean, that's the $1 million question, right? So, today the industry continues to be faced with these allocations and the stretched lead times. And as I mentioned, ST is not immune to that and those challenges. But you do see activities going on, such things as the continued investment in manufacturing. Both the U.S. and Europe have their CHIPS Acts, and so you see a lot of publicized investments going in. ST themselves, we remain committed to our investments. We have 13 manufacturing sites worldwide. We've announced a planned capex of almost $3.5 billion this year in 2022. And we have capacity expansion coming online from the previous year investments in CapEx. So these are things that ST continues to do. When will this end? For me, it's too early to tell, too early to predict. We do see things that may be stabilizing the market a little bit. You've got with the lift of masks, maybe people are moving from sitting at home and buying consumer goods with their disposable income to getting out and and taking advantage of those services that for the last 2 years they haven't. So that
Yeah.
could be a sign of stabilization. Of course, we've got the inflationary things that could be stabilizing some of these end markets. And then finally, just again, when people are out and about, stabilization of the PC space potentially. There's early signs of that. But really, until these mega trends stabilize that I mentioned earlier, we're going to see it's just too difficult to predict at this point.
Yeah, I think it does seem like there's constantly some new crisis going on
Yeah.
somewhere in the world that seems to add and snowball onto this already very difficult situation, no questions. So as you're talking with, if you're talking with an embedded engineer at a customer, or you're talking with a purchasing department at a customer that wants to try and be production with their new product, maybe it's January of next year. What is the advice that you would give to them to make sure that they do have some continuity of supply to at least start ramping up production, a year from now?
That's a great question, and really, it comes down to visibility and our visibility, the customer's visibility to their supply chain,
Yep.
transparency in their true needs. When you can't service everyone's demand, understanding true needs is critical, and that comes with open lines of communication and dialogue early and often in the conversations with the customer, and that's paramount. Obviously, order placement is mandatory at this point in time.
Yep, no question, and that's certainly to give a little bit of a sales pitch for the future side of things. That's certainly where we've seen the most success we've had with customers to make sure they've got part supply is communication. It really does come down to that communication element to make sure that we understand what are your needs, what are your plans as early as possible, so we can start to pipeline product and give the message back to ST and other suppliers that we're going to need this particular part for this particular customer by this date, and we can get that pipeline in sooner. And the earlier those conversations happen, the better. I think traditionally, we've all felt comfortable with, well, if I talk to whoever I'm buying the parts from 6 months in advance, I'm probably going to be just fine. I'll be able to get parts in time to do my build. I think we're now in a world where it really does need to be a year, maybe even 18 months in advance. You've got to at least start communicating an idea of what you have. And I know with that much runway for customers, it's very hard to say, I don't fully know what I'm going to need in August of 2023. But I think the more that we can kind of get an idea of that as that sort starts to formulate and sharpen, the better we all can be at making sure that customers have the product that they very much need. So that communication line, I would say, from my perspective, is absolutely key.
Yeah,
Well, from all
absolutely,
parties.
absolutely. I mean, we understand the constraints and the challenges that puts on a customer. They've got great partners like yourself at Future Electronics. These challenges and requirement to give that visibility is the same placed on ST from our supply base, right? Everybody's trying to manage this situation that none of us really caused individually. And so it goes both ways, and we definitely are empathetic to the challenges that may bring. But we're under the same challenges, and I think open lines of communication is the way to manage through it.
Yeah, no question, no question. And as we've kind of gone through this, it's been interesting for me working with engineers. It's typical to see engineers take a look at their existing board design and change out some parts. Maybe you see a connector change from one connector, supplier to another, a voltage regulator change, certainly resistors and capacitors regularly changing and AVL expansion on that. But over the course of the last year, I've seen a ton of customers coming in and saying, I'm going to change this board. I'm actually going to change my MCU. And that's the only part I want to change. I want to move from this MCU to this MCU. And that's an enormous redesign effort on a board, but something that a lot of customers feel that they're obligated to go do. What kind of advice do you give to those designers that are trying to select their next microcontroller? And what should they be doing? What should they be considering as they're selecting that primary component for most embedded designs?
Yeah, yeah. I go back to the early and often conversation and discussions with suppliers and distributors like yourselves. So engineering communities getting together to understand better where the industry trends are going, where
Yep.
technology and manufacturing investments are happening, so they can look 6, 12, 18 months out and feel comfortable about where things are going. I mean, technology is rapidly changing in response to customer demands and requirements. This means that the product design cycles are accelerating and the time between those cycles are shortening. So
Yeah.
again, having that early and often conversation is critical.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And, for that key component, there's no doubt about it. We've got to make sure we understand exactly what the needs are and start to, again, pipeline that product sooner the better so that Future can put it on the shelves for our customers. And we try and do that anyway. Certainly make sure that we've got that product sitting on one of our warehouses around the world so that it can get out to the customers that need it for initial proto runs and then certainly for the eventual production runs as well. So you talked a little bit about the capital expenditures that ST is going through to build additional fab capacity and make sure that you're going to be able to build products. I know in addition to that, many of the microcontrollers in the Cortex M space are still on 200 millimeter wafers, and I'm not seeing a ton of, from most of the different fabs around the world. It seems like the lines that they're increasing capacity on are more on the 300 millimeter wafers and some of the smaller, like 20 nanometer transistor processes. What is ST doing to kind of mitigate that and continue to? You mentioned the CapEx expenditure, but are you doing things like trying to change the process that your Cortex M microcontrollers are being built on? Is there any investment in those 200 millimeter lines?
Yeah, the evolution of 300 millimeter wafers, advanced process technology nodes, 90 nanometer and below, 40, etc. This is where ST is investing for the most part. ST strategies are guided by the electronic industry and the
Yeah.
enabling trends, and that drives our investment and our roadmap decisions. Ultimately we're trying to solve the challenges and problems of our customers, and that's what drives us. We're investment and committed to innovation. As an example, we're a 4-time winner of the top 100 global inventor awards, recognizing exceptional consistency and scaling of innovation in the market. So ST is very proud of that. It speaks
Yeah.
to our continued focus on innovation. The capex that I mentioned earlier is obviously towards manufacturing, but also developing advanced process nodes and that IP required to stay 2 steps ahead of our competition while solving our customers' needs.
Absolutely. And that's exciting. I think, the fact that this is forcing some continued innovation in the industry and I think the betterment of overall technology, we're going to come out the other side of this, a stronger industry as a whole. Certainly there's some serious growing pains going on right now in that. I'm excited about where it's going. I'm excited about the potential and the continued growth in the industry with electronics going in so many other places and where that's going to take us, as a world. At the end of the day. So, Marty, I can't thank you enough. I know you're having a lot of very hard conversations right now. I think we all are, and I really appreciate you having a hard conversation with me as well. You know,
If all my
but
conversations could be as difficult as this, I'll sign up every day.
well, we're on camera right now. Afterwards, we'll have a more difficult. No,
Okay.
we won't. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But no, I really do appreciate it. Thank you to the audience so much for watching and taking a little bit of time to learn a little bit about what Marty and I are seeing right now in this challenging market environment. If you have issues, if you've got needs, whether you're currently doing a design or you're trying to make sure that you're getting your existing designs in production, we at Future Electronics would be more than happy to help you out. Please reach out to us at shapingthefuture at futureelectronics.com. Again, that's shapingthefuture at futureelectronics.com. And we'd love to work with you. Again, like I said earlier, and Marty and I were speaking about, communication in this market is so very important. The faster we know, the faster we can help. And so I think that's something that we've become very, very good at, very adept at, and we'd love to help you and your companies. Thank you very much. Appreciate you joining us today on this episode of The Current. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.